But if we're going to talk about people who are maybe in child welfare or have been in child welfare, so maybe they've spent some time in foster care, or due to the substance use of their own biological families, or perhaps they've been adopted, um, there's a much higher prevalence of FASD in those populations. Those populations are closer to, according to Canadian research, 18% of that population. So,
Wow,
that's a lot of kids, right? For
that
every
is.
100 foster kids, 18 of them have been prenatally exposed to alcohol. And again, very conservative, because if we think about what are the reasons why somebody goes into foster care, it's primarily, substance use. It's domestic violence, it's substance use, it's, all sorts of things. But so it's a high prevalence.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and those numbers really took me back. I had no idea. Well, so that I thought was a really important thing to bring attention to. And then the second point that I had made was that the highest, and you already touched on this a little bit, highest risk for exposure of a fetus are women between ages 18 and 25. A lot of women are binge drinking, and I think you plan to clarify that just a little bit, because when I think of binge drinking, I think of weekend warrioring, and I'm good.
Yeah.
Apparently that's not really what binge drinking is. So during this time or are an active addiction, so the discovery may come even later. So please clarify perhaps how that may play a role in substance use disorders, and just unpack that a little bit for us, if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure. I'm really happy to. And again, I want to come back to the point that we know that women are not harming their babies intentionally. We know
Mm-hmm.
that. So this comes from a place of love and respect for everybody who's listening and watching, whether they're thinking about their own prenatal experience or that of their children. Please know that there's so much misinformation out there. Many women,
Mm-hmm.
especially in previous generations, were told that, hey, it's okay to drink alcohol. Maybe even that in Europe, they were given lager to help their iron,
Yeah,
if they were anemic during
yeah.
pregnancy. So, I mean, this is worldwide, and
I
it
remember,
is, yeah, go
sorry to
ahead.
cut you off, but I remember my mom telling me that in Great Britain, it was very common for moms to be told drink a pint of Guinness every day.
Yes.
What?
Yes, so they got their iron and they got their
Yeah,
nutrients from the Guinness. Exactly. So
yeah.
this is why nobody is laying fault at the women's feet. No,
Mm-hmm.
this is about misinformation given to women over the
Mm-hmm.
many years and decades. So let me start with that. And so we also know, so let's go back to those prevalence rates. So let's talk about who drinks alcohol. Everybody drinks alcohol, right? Statistically, over 80% of women drink alcohol in Canada. Okay, so that's a lot of women. What do we know about pregnancies? Up to 60% of pregnancies are unplanned. They're surprise pregnancies, right? You and I talked about that earlier, and I said the
Mm-hmm.
one pregnancy I had was unplanned. It caught me by surprise. My birth control failed me and I was pregnant. You said you had 2 unplanned pregnancies. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
that's the norm, 60% of pregnancies. So if we say 80% of women drink alcohol, even casually, and 60% of pregnancies are unplanned, we can now start to do some quick math to realize, my goodness, there's a lot of people at risk who didn't know that they were at risk of
Mm-hmm.
perhaps being impacted by prenatal alcohol exposure. And so that's really important to keep in mind, right? And then people who have a substance use disorder, as you mentioned, may not realize that they're pregnant as early as someone else might be, or they may have a harder time stopping using their substances. Certainly an individual is going to try to tamper down what they're using, but they may have a hard time stopping altogether. I mean, substance use disorders are complicated.